Hi there, folks. Welcome back to Mossy Roots Farm. I think you're going to need some equipment if you start your farm. Now, I'm going to say that, and I'm going to immediately contradict myself and say you don't need a single piece of equipment to start your farm besides a fence and some cows. And you're going to say, well, wait a minute. You're going to tell me all about these tractors that you have, and you're going to tell me I don't need a tractor? Absolutely. And I think that makes me qualified to say you don't need a tractor because I have 5 tractors, and I only use one of them maybe a couple times a month in the summertime, and in the wintertime 0 times a month because I do bale grazing like this, set it all out ahead of time so I don't have to start it. But anyways, let's not get down a rabbit hole first thing. Let's discuss why you don't need equipment to start your farm. These round bales can be placed in your field by your neighbor. If you get a good relationship going with a local hay supplier and you pay him an extra, I don't know, 10, 20 bucks a bale, just depends on what your neighbor thinks is a good deal and what is not a good deal, then your neighbor may put the round bales out here for you. You know, you can go and rent from your local United Rental, Suncoast Rental, Lincoln Rental, whatever the rental place is near you, you can go and rent some equipment. All you need is a skid steer with a bale spear. A skid steer would be able to handle these. Even a smaller size skid steer could handle these bales. Some of them are only 8 to 1,200 pounds if you don't buy the monster 6x6 bales. So, why then do I say you don't need equipment if I'm telling you you need equipment? Well, because equipment's very costly. So I'm very familiar with the market right now on John Deere 3020s and 4020s. To buy a used John Deere 3020 is anywhere from $5,000-$6,000 if it's real beat up, maybe needs a motor, all the way up to $8,000, $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 if it's really shiny and painted and has a front end loader and has all the bells and whistles like a cab maybe. It's very expensive. If you go and buy yourself a Rural King tractor or a little John Deere or a little whatever brand you have available to you, TYM, LS, there's about 1 million of them. Those are again anywhere from $10,000 to $45,000. Well, let's say, I'm not going to mess around with the tractor. I'll just buy myself a skid steer. Do you know how expensive skid steers are anymore? Skid steers are ridiculously expensive. I'm finding skid steers, even used beat up ones, for $20,000 to $30,000 that really need some work. Sure, you could find a couple skid steers that maybe have been in a fire or something that's really destroyed. That doesn't sound like a very smart investment because you'd have to basically rebuild the whole thing. You know, that doesn't sound like a good idea. So why go out, put yourself even $10,000 in the hole just on a tractor? Why not go out and put yourself $10,000 in the hole in cows or in hay or in a barn or a shed or round bale rings or any of the number of the sort? That's why I say you don't need a tractor. Now, if you've seen previous videos, I did a whole tractor lineup. I do have 5 tractors, and I will say you can start out with some smaller tractors, and maybe we go take a peek at that here towards the end of the video. And we can go that route, because again, you can do this with some cheaper equipment. It's just going to be a little harder to find, and you may have to work on it. But still, a decent size 3020 John Deere, which could do some mowing, some raking, some baling for you, is going to end up being $8,000 to $10,000 on average. So there's my whole spiel on why you shouldn't buy equipment. But let's go take a look at some of the equipment I do own and tell you why I think you should buy certain ones if you are going to buy equipment anyways. So let's say you are 1,000% dead set on getting you a tractor. Let's say you already have an old tractor like this Ford 861 or the Mossy 135. Or your neighbor's got one for sale and they only want $1,000 or $2,000 for it. I'd say it'd be worth it. I'd say if you're going to do that, you definitely want a front loader or at absolute minimum a bale spear. But be careful when you do a bale spear. You may need to add a bunch of lead weights to the front of your little Mossy because the front end gets picked up in the air and you go for a ride. Now, ideally, you'd end up with something like this John Deere 3020. It's got a front end loader, got a bale spear, so you can hook her up and get going. You can stack them 3-4 bales high. It's heavy duty enough that you don't have to worry so much about it picking the front end or not being able to power a piece of equipment. But again, 8-10 grand is pretty expensive. These old Fords, if you notice here, this had a hookup for, I'm pretty sure, a single arm front loader. So you can get a front loader for these things. And in fact, my father-in-law used to have a tractor. It was an old Ford that had a front loader that was not a trip bucket. Trip bucket is basically where it'll hold it up in the air. Here's my bucket. And then you trip a lever and it dumps. There's no control to the dumping mechanism. It just goes boop and dumps. So you could attach a hydraulic cylinder and make something like that work. Absolutely. You can start with one of these, and it can be cost effective to start with one of these, but you're going to be limited. All of these tractors are two-wheel drive. You're not going to get out there in that field right now with a two-wheel drive, even small tractor like this. They probably only weigh 4,000 or 5,000 pounds at most. You're not getting out in the field with these tractors today. Not happening. But they're a very affordable option. These Masseys seem to be going for way more money than the old Fords, which I don't really quite understand. The only difference between these two girls is one has power steering. The Massey's got power steering. They both have live PTO, I think. Yeah, pretty sure it's live PTO. They both have about 35, 40 horse, depending on which number you look at and such. You could start with one of these. But why should you? Well, if you count up all the extra costs around bales, you could pay for one of these old tractors. Yeah, but then you got to work on it. This tractor had, I believe, a carburetor rebuild. I know it had the ignition system rebuild on it. New coil, new plugs, new wires, new distributor, all that fun jazz. So I know it's been rebuilt like that. You know, this old girl over here, I'm having a heck of a time with the neutral safety switch, which is up inside of here somewhere. Yeah, that thing right there. I'm about tempted to just disconnect that thing and permanently leave it on because it has shut the tractor off before because the connections are old and tried replacing them, but it's still just a little fuzzy. I had to fix the exhaust on this old girl. The exhaust is all my contraption, my doing, and yes, the exhaust is backwards. I don't know why I'm an idiot and did it backwards, but hey, it's in and it works. So you may have to do a little bit of work. That doesn't make it a bad machine. That just means you got to add that into your budget. So honestly, the equipment you need to start out is totally up to you. You absolutely 110% can get away with paying a neighbor $5 or $10 at extra a bale to have him set it out wherever you want it set, have him set it out whenever. You know, if you get a good deal with your neighbor, you could even pay for your hay ahead of time. Pay for your hay in June, see if the neighbor would store it for you, and just have the neighbor drive it over whenever you need hay. You know, that relies on a good working relationship with your neighbor, but hey, it's doable. So, anyways, guys, enough rambling about some old pieces of iron. I'll see you guys on the next one.